All right, welcome to Salt City Hoops live postcast. A little bit later start. It's 10:11 Mountain Time because we had an overtime thrilling victory today. Whew, catching our breath here. Just got all the links out for everyone to join at their leisure as we get in here to talk about this Jazz overtime win. Hopefully it's not bedtime for you guys. You can come in and hang out with us for a minute here. What a game that we have in overtime thriller for the Jazz over the Pelicans. The Jazz are 3-0 against the Pelicans this year. Who saw this coming? So the Jazz, after a dominating Tuesday win in which we held the Pelicans to, I think it was like 2 of 24 three-point shooting before garbage time. It might have been a little bit better than that, but I think it was like 10% three-point shooting in non-garbage time. A little bit closer game today, a little bit better three-point shooting from the Pelicans today from some of their better players. You also had great offense by Zion again. He was able to stay out of foul trouble, so he's able to get in more points, more buckets, put more people in foul trouble. But the game script was just totally different today. The Pelicans are up pretty much the entire game. They're up 13 points at a couple different points in the third quarter, and the Jazz just keep fighting back. A real theme of the third quarter was the Jazz hitting a very good, well-executed three-point bucket or a two-point bucket, and then followed by just giving up a three to a Trey Murphy or a Najee Marshall, like decent three-point shooters for the Pelicans, instead of Tuesday when the defense was really funneling the shots to non-shooters and guarding Zion pretty decently. But Zion was also wrecking in the paint, couldn't do anything about him in the third quarter, so these little mini runs the Jazz were trying to start just couldn't get going. Zion finally takes a breather in the third quarter to fourth quarter, and the Jazz take their first lead of the second half, and that's when it became a back and forth game. Game goes to overtime. Jazz have the ball with 2 seconds left after giving up a three in regulation to tie the game by the Pelicans. But the Jazz have the ball with 2 seconds left to play in regulation. They toss up a pass to Lauri Markkanen, who's guarded by Larry Nance. And they say, Lauri Markkanen, get the tip-in, get the bucket. And he catches the ball and flicks his wrist to... Well, you didn't need to do a tip-in. He did have a nice little flick of the wrist to try to get a high-arcing shot over Nance. And Nance is one of the best leapers in NBA history, and he catches this fingertip on the very top apex of the ball to block the shot from going in. The officials called goaltending at first, but it was a very skeptical goaltending call. They didn't even make the call on the floor until about 10 seconds after the play was over, with the goal that if it wasn't goaltending, you can't review a play to say, actually it was, but if you do call goaltending on the floor, you can then go to the monitor and say if, overturn it or not. So I think that was the right procedural move by the officials. Looking at it with like Zapruder-like accuracy, I think you could really make an argument that the ball was slightly going on the way down. But the rule in the NBA is not like the NFL where it has to be conclusive video review to overturn it. It still ends up being a Secaucus judgment call as to what should the right call be. Let's make the call as to what it should be. And in a situation like that where it's not clear what should have happened, it's not like you give that much weight to the call on the floor when it's like that last play of the game type of thing where they're really just making the call so that they can get an accurate review. It's not like they felt very good about it to begin with. So I'm going to do some more research on the procedural aspects of replay review, but the intent was that they wanted to review it so you make an accurate goaltending call, go from there. Anyways, we're already talking too much bullshit about officiating. Let's crack open a beer on the Salt City Hoops live post-game chat and beer. Same beer as Tuesday, Milkshake IPA. I don't drink IPAs. I find them... I don't like IPAs for the reason most people don't. But Milkshake IPAs were something I discovered about 3 years ago from Four Noses Brewing Company. They make all sorts of different fruit-based, lactose-based milkshake IPAs, and we were cracking open a 6.3% strawberry banana velvet milkshake IPA to celebrate this Jazz victory. I am hyped up. Cheers to you all in the spaces, and you too for the Salt City Hoops live post-game chat and beer. Let's drink up and talk about what we got going today. So my name's Mark. Happy to have you here. As always, 3-0 against the Pelicans this year, and let's get the fan stuff out of the way. right? And this is just another example of this team being remarkably more enjoyable as an experience from game to game, right? Now, expectations, the stress of expectations, if those expectations are met, right? Like, let's say the Jazz won a title, right? Like, that stress would be worth it. We'd be dancing in the streets for weeks. Maybe if they made the finals, we could say, like, what a great season. To have such high expectations completely just punched in the face and said, like, no, your expectations were completely bullshit. This team is way off base. We're left feeling very sad about the combination of the stress we were putting ourselves through as Jazz fans combined with the output, right? I think there are a lot of other situations in sports where we get stressed out because our team has expectations, but we end up feeling happy about the season in general. Those on the video see that I'm wearing a Niners shawl color sweatshirt with my Jazz hat today because the Niners played tonight. The Niners are a great example of this. Like, they've had great playoff runs over the past few years, and I've left feeling pretty happy about that. It's made the stress worth it, and the stress was just so not worth it for this Jazz team. So you go in this year with 0 championship expectations. But even now that we've all kind of reset our expectations for what this Jazz team is, which is not winning a championship or even making the playoffs for most people, but I think we still go into these games feeling like, well, they should win this game. Like, this is, or they should definitely have a chance at winning this game. Like, more than just being a bad team. Maybe they're a 500 team the rest of the way. So these new expectations of, like, we're still putting a little bit more pressure on the team and ourselves than we did earlier in the season. And so the game like this, to go through the stressful moments of this Pelicans game tonight and walk out with a win, this was great. I am so happy about tonight. I'm happy about the direction of every single player on the Jazz not named Rudy Gay. And I guess Talen Horton-Tucker, but you get a DMP CD, then I don't have to talk about you, so I won't talk about THT anymore. So if you're not named Rudy Gay, I feel good about where you are on the team. One major quirk today. We're all feeling great about tonight. I can't wait to talk about this with you and anybody else. If you're in the spaces, if you're on YouTube, you can drop a comment, request to speak. We'll get to you in a bit after I summarize really what happened today and some of the small things I noted as I was watching. So obviously the big quirk today was Walker Kessler playing a majority of minutes over Jared Vanderbilt, especially late fourth quarter overtime. I'm curious to see what Will Hardy's thoughts were after the game and about this. Obviously, Kessler was playing great, and it's easy to say, like, bleep blorp, he's playing great, keep him in. But, like, Jared Vanderbilt's a starter, right? And Walker Kessler's a rookie, and there's definitely going to be some tension there no matter how much the team likes each other. Also, Walker Kessler's the center, and at the end of the game, they're playing Kessler, Olynyk, and Markkanen, and there's just a very substantive difference when your non-shooter on the floor is Jared Vanderbilt, a 6'8", great rebounding type, or a Walker Kessler, who's a 7'1" behemoth, right? There's just there's a different vibe there. One thing I was very wrong about, late in, about a minute and a half into overtime, Kessler's playing with 5 fouls, playing aggressively, loved his play. He picked up a couple silly rookie fouls as he does. He had a couple sloppy contests against Zion Williamson. I think he had one offensive foul that was just unnecessary. But his 6th foul was going for an offensive rebound where he clearly high points the ball and gets his hands on it first, but he's kind of careening into Larry Nance, and they call a foul on Walker Kessler, a loose ball foul as an improper rebound. I'm not going to claim to go into another fucking replay review and say whatever, but that was going to be Kessler's 6th foul, and he was going to foul out of the game, and Will Hardy challenges it and gets it overturned, and Kessler's able to play the entire rest of the way. And where I was wrong was that I thought, maybe not worthy of a challenge. Like, we still got high leverage points left to play. Kessler uses 6 fouls, it's fine, and the next guy off the bench is Jared Vanderbilt, who can still do some great things. Where I ended up wrong is Kessler's best moments of the entire game, last 3.5 minutes. He was finally this wonderful panacea for the Jazz's terrible defensive rebounding. He finally plays solid defense against Zion Williamson. He had a couple good moments, but by and large, Utah could not guard Zion Williamson today, which is not a surprise, but Kessler saved his great defensive moments for when finally Zion Williamson slowed down. And so Kessler staying in those last 3.5 minutes wins Utah the game. I don't think that's too far of a stretch to say that what wins Utah the game overall is Jordan Clarkson's 39 points. He had 17 points in the first quarter, which is a career high in any quarter for Jordan Clarkson, which is remarkable considering the flamethrower things we've seen out of Clarkson over the past couple of years. And Clarkson, by far and away, Utah's best player, had some great moments defensively as well. But the last 3.5 minutes, the clutch performance it's led by Kessler on the defensive end. He also got a bucket in the last couple minutes too, if I'm not mistaken, off of a pass, or I think it was Olynyk got CJ McCollum switched onto him, which, if anyone has a good memory, immediately has flashbacks to when Kelly Olynyk got the ball off an inbounds in the first Pelicans game. And Kelly Olynyk's looking around for someone to pass to, and he sees that CJ McCollum's guarding him. So Olynyk took McCollum off the dribble and got the awkward, leaning, floating flip shot for the game winner. Same thing happened today. It wasn't off an inbounds, but Olynyk sees CJ McCollum on him and just decides to take him off the dribble. Only this time Olynyk loses the ball, but he loses the ball in such a fashion that it just squirts out to Walker Kessler, who gets an easy dunk. It almost looked like a pass, but I assure you it wasn't. So Kessler gets 2 points at the end. He's got great defense, great rebounding. He ends up with just 11 and 8 and 3 blocks, but the dude played 28 minutes today, including all of overtime. He's here, man. Like you can immediately dive into what would you pay Walker Kessler right now if he hit free agency, right? He's going to be a restricted free agent in 3 off seasons. Like, what is that going to really look like for us? It definitely presents like an interesting team construct thing. His next extension or his restricted free agency will be after the cap spike. So it's like, are we going to be putting ourselves in a situation again where you're paying like a huge 8-figure salary to a center who doesn't shoot? But right now it's fun, so we're not going to talk about that right now. That's more of an off-season discussion. I just can't help but sometimes think about it. He was great. I wouldn't give him the number one game ball today. That obviously belongs to Clarkson, but we have to be thankful for what Walker Kessler did. A+ defense in the fourth quarter and overtime. Loved Hardy sticking with him. Kessler had a couple total bonehead moments today that I think it would be very easy to say like he just doesn't have it today. And in fact, after Kessler picked up an early third foul, we saw a few Udoka Azubuike minutes. And Azubuike had a couple dunks early. The second dunk came after he dropped the ball, but hey, I'm not going to say too much about that. He picked up a defensive 3 seconds that I was watching him in the paint, and I was like, Azubuike wasn't really anywhere close to anybody for 2 of the seconds, and he was trying to like hedge and guard 2 different guys at once. And so Azubuike did not play super well in his few minutes with Kessler getting foul trouble. But I think it was also pretty clear that Hardy needed size on the floor today. Rebounding is a massive problem for Utah on the defensive end. Obviously, their offensive rebounding is still absurd. As I pull up my stats here for Utah generally, but they're giving up 35, 37, 40% offensive rebound rate in every single game, right? And while Utah is also contributing their own 35, 37, 40% offensive rebound rate, like that's just not sustainable with the level of turnovers and such that Utah tends to commit. And Utah had a very bad turnover rate going into the fourth quarter. They finally tightened up their handle, and they ended up a pretty average turnover percentage towards the end of the game. And so that rebounding difference, you needed to have a little bit more size against the Pelicans, who just slaughter you with good rebounders in not just Jonas Valanciunas, who starts and doesn't finish games for the Pelicans at this point, but we all know what Williamson can do on the offensive glass. Larry Nance Jr. was just crushing it on the offensive glass today. The New Orleans went into overtime. Here's a great showing of what happened defensively. Going into overtime, New Orleans had a 37% offensive rebound rate. By the way, that's just far too. What you want is something around like 30, right, or even below that if you're doing well. They had 14 offensive rebounds going into they had all 15 of their offensive rebounds in regulation. They got no offensive rebounds in overtime, and they finished with a 27% offensive rebound rate, which is totally adequate. That is totally adequate. That really shows that Utah finally cleaned up the defensive glass in overtime, and that was just that those possessions really did matter. Combined with a couple turnovers, there was a great offensive rebound Utah got because we had in overtime they were switching Zion Williamson, or New Orleans was switching everything. So Utah's strategy to start overtime was, okay, if you're going to switch everything, we're going to figure out a way to contrive Zion Williamson to guard Jordan Clarkson. And that didn't work as well as you would think as far as like points that Jordan Clarkson was able to score. But there was one notable possession where Jordan Clarkson shoots a three from the top of the arc and Zion Williamson has to contest and he's just nowhere near the paint, right? So you're left with just Larry Nance against Olynyk, Kessler, and Markkanen going for the offensive rebound, and Utah comes away with that possession. And I think that's an important part of the defensive strategy there too, is not just, can Jordan Clarkson beat Zion Williamson, which he was able to do for a couple layups in overtime, which was obviously very, very helpful. But I thought it was also notable to just pull Zion out of the paint as much as possible, so we can allow Utah's good offensive rebounders to get there. I talk a lot about rebounding this season because it's just a problem for the Jazz, as far as the issues they have from a night-to-night basis, and giving up offensive rebounds remains a big issue for them. They're currently giving up 29.6% offensive rebound percentage in the NBA. That would be 28th in the league. And I think league average, I said that league average was probably around, like, you want it to be below 30, but I think you want it to be around 25% if I'm remembering correctly. But this makes for a great radio of me talking about offensive rebound percentage, so I'll shut up about that. I'm just really impressed with how the team clamped down in overtime with size, and that's why I think Walker Kessler played a lot more minutes than Jared Vanderbilt today, who I thought was fine, but ultimately you need a little bit more size today going against this big, strong Pelicans team on the glass. And defensively, too. I think Zion Williamson going to the paint, right? He was met with arms and solid vertical defense in Kessler, and a lot of times Markkanen was down there providing help and giving trouble down there. And Olynyk can't do anything to protect the rim, but Olynyk kind of had some interesting defensive plays, and I thought Olynyk's defense was acceptable for who Olynyk is at this point in his career. If you have Olynyk guarding Zion Williamson on a possession, you're just hoping he doesn't die on the court. And in fact, Olynyk tried to draw a charge at the end of regulation, and there was just no chance that the refs were going to call a charge against Zion Williamson in that case. Like, everyone expected Olynyk to try to draw the charge, and he flops on the floor after getting a nice hard shoulder from Zion Williamson in the post. And it was probably a charge. Like, Zion Williamson extends his arm out a little bit, but every ref was watching and just said, "No, we're not going to let this one fly." Zion Williamson gets the easy bucket there. Pulling up some other folks who played today, Rudy Gay was pretty miserable. That's all I'll say about him, because I have to mention it once every time to make that one's for the fans, talking about Rudy Gay a little bit. Jared Vanderbilt ends up with 21 points today. He's 0 of 4 from the field. His 3-point shot attempt hit the top of the backboard. So everyone who was talking about Jared Vanderbilt's improvement from Tuesday, we had a long discussion about Jared Vanderbilt as a shooter, and I said what's going to keep him on the floor is his passing and his defense, right? And he had 4 defensive rebounds in 21 minutes today. He had 3 assists in the first half, and I thought he was pretty solid, but it just wasn't providing the size and rebounding on the defensive end that we needed against Zion Williamson and Larry Nance. Jordan Clarkson, we haven't talked enough about him today. 39 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, only 4 turnovers for a high-usage player. 15 to 26 from the field, 7 of 14 from 3, 2 of 3 from the free throw line. Just in control within himself. The things that bothered us about Jordan Clarkson over the past couple years are just largely extricated from his game now. right? This is a guy who now just, like, when he gets the ball, I feel confident that he's going to make correct decisions with it. Instead of hijack a possession because that is what he's charged to do, I think he's being charged with, hey, you have to be aware of the other 4 players on the court now. And if you look at the guy defending you and you feel a way to get 2 or 3 points or get a foul or whatever, like, that's still who you are, Jordan Clarkson, but be aware of everyone else on the court. And I think the way he's kind of gliding into his possessions, he's manipulating the defense away from certain, from poor guarding positions, or if he recognizes that the defense is switching, he's like, I know exactly how to manipulate the defense so I get a poor defender on me. He had Zion Williamson guarding him a lot of the time, and Zion Williamson has had a great improvement in his defense this year. He had one game against the Bucks that just he was stout and great, but he still goes for blocks too much, and he just needs to learn how to use his regular size and move his feet. But he misses rotations all the time, and when that dude gets tired, his feet are cement blocks. And towards the second half, his defense was pretty miserable, and I think that's when Utah started to make their run with him off the court, and then Zion comes back on the court. He's still just gassed and winded, and he can only really provide that oomph on the offensive end based on, like, raw talent, right? So Jordan Clarkson was able to kind of draw Zion onto him a lot of the game today, and he was the MVP for today. Before we talk about Lowry, I do want to mention that Mike Conley's stat line will never, ever, ever show the impact he made today. 1 of 8 from the field. His shot was way off. He had a really nice running floater past Zion Williamson in the first quarter. I think it went off the glass, so not quite a floater, but he completely froze Zion with a hesitation dribble right in the middle of the paint. And got an easy layup out of that, and then went 0 of 7 the rest of the way, including 0 of 4 from 3 with some real bad misses there. 2 of 6 from the free throw line, including 0 of 2 from the free throw line late that would have sealed it and prevented overtime to begin with. But it's okay. It's all right, because he played great defense towards the end, and his best play of the game, which is a play that only one player on the team can do, and it would be Mike Conley. Jordan Clarkson he doesn't have Zion Williamson at the end of the game, but he does draw, I think it was Najee Marshall was guarding him, and Clarkson just straight up loses the ball as he's kind of setting up the play. And Clarkson dives on the ball, great hustle by Clarkson. Clarkson's energy and hustle this year is great. Everyone points at his low steal totals and everything, but you'll never see Clarkson, like, just not give a shit, which tended to happen a couple times over the past couple years. Like, his effort is always just sky high. Anyways, he dives on the floor, gets the ball to Conley, who is at this point, like, near half court, near the sideline, not really a whole lot of places to go, and everyone's kind of scrambling around, diving on the floor. He dribbles the ball to the center of the at the free throw line, and he no-looks a left-handed pass to his right to a wide-open Lowry Markkanen on the wing. The no-look froze the wing defender, who I believe was Trey Murphy at the time, from closing out on Lowry with decent speed, and Lowry Markkanen sunk it. Like, obviously, it's a great shot by Lowry. It's wide open, and he was great today. But that pass and composure from Conley was just rock star. A lot of people are talking about Conley's defense against CJ McCollum, which would have tied the game late in overtime. Conley defended him well. He poked the ball out on 2 consecutive inbounds plays. Eventually, McCollum gets it on the 3rd time. And before New Orleans sends a switch, Conley is totally up in his belt, playing great defense, not letting CJ McCollum get anywhere near where he wants to go. Conley figured out that McCollum was only going to shoot a 3, so Conley was, like, guiding him into the paint, right? And McCollum's, like, constantly having to retreat out of the paint so we could shoot the 3. But finally, New Orleans sends a screen, and the instructions there for most teams, and especially against a good shooter like CJ McCollum is you're going to switch, right? And so Jordan Clarkson ends up on McCollum. So Conley's defense is now no longer relevant, right? So a lot of praise for Conley's defense at the end of the game, which was great. But then you end up with Clarkson on McCollum, and Clarkson tried really hard, but he gave up a wide open 3-point attempt from CJ McCollum that thankfully fell very, very short. It was actually so short that like as soon as CJ felt like he was wide open, it kind of like changed his shooting motion almost. It was like mind games defense. He was so wide open. But he still missed. And so Conley was just like a good leader, good spirit today. Towards the end of the game, he didn't get into the game late for a more extended period because Nickeil Alexander-Walker was playing decently. Commentators were talking a lot about Nickeil Alexander-Walker's defense on CJ McCollum. I thought his defense was fine. I think a lot of McCollum's issues this year are really self-inflicted. McCollum has been quite poor this year. His three-point shooting is very poor. He's still not shooting threes. He only shot 1 of 2 from 3 today. That was the other night. Tonight it was. Shot a few. He had it going early. I pulled up the wrong game. Yeah, it was 3 of 8 from 3 today. I was like, he shot a little bit better than 1 and 2 from 3 today. I was like, those figures were not right. McCollum absolutely had it going early, and he really slowed down late. So I thought Nickeil Alexander-Walker's defense was a little overrated, considering that McCollum still ended up with 28.6 rebounds, 4 assists, on 3 of 8 shooting, 11 of 25 from the field, and got to the line 3 times. But I think it was notable that Conley was still playing poor, though, so you end up having Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing 20 minutes as the superior backcourt option. We end up with Malik Beasley only playing 25 minutes. I thought he was effective on both ends of the court. He didn't really have a tough defensive assignment, but he picked up 3 rebounds in 25 minutes. That's fine from a backcourt player. And yeah, 4 of 11 from 3, 6 of 15 from the field. That's what you want out of Malik Beasley. 1 turnover. I thought he just was playing within himself. Did not mind him at all. I was surprised he didn't play as much to stretch him out in lieu of Rudy Gay's 17 minutes, right? Like they're not perfect replacements for each other, but I do think you can cobble together a better rotation that limits the amount. It limits your Rudy Gay exposure night to night. Right? Like that's the whole idea. So I thought Beasley played fine, and I think Alexander Walker, there's going to be some talk about his defense. He's been playing great recently, especially offensively. I did think his offense was pretty good. He had a couple great jumpers. One was a weird contested mid-range. It wasn't even mid-range. It was a long 2 with 11 seconds left on the clock. It went in, so you can't complain too much, but the 3-point shot was looking a little bit better. He went 1 of 3 today, but it was all within rhythm, and he didn't have to force anything or contested shots or anything. So I thought he was fine. That kind of concludes exactly everybody except for Lauri Markkanen, who I think is sometimes the guy just puts up the quietest 31 points, right? His 3-point shot is officially on fire. And if you're not going to give the MVP of the night to Jordan Clarkson, you got to give it to Lauri Markkanen. Like Malik Beasley, we didn't put Markkanen in tough defensive positions. He did end up with 5 fouls because at a certain point in the game, Will Hardy's trying to force Markkanen to provide a lot of help on Zion Williamson. So he was picking up some touch fouls. He got some shooting fouls, trying to prevent Larry Nance from getting offensive rebounds, that kind of thing. But he was drawing lots of contact. He finishes 10 of 10 from the free throw line, 8 of 15 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. And Lauri Markkanen on the season, I'm looking at his 3-point shooting now that started out really poorly. He's now up to 42% from 3, 41.5% from 3. It was not at 41.5 previously in his career. So 41.5% would be a career high for him. Obviously, he's a career high in points. Obviously, he's not quite at a career high in rebounds. He's at 8.5. His career high is 9.0, but it's almost a full 3 rebounds more than last year. He's got 11 double-doubles on the year. when he's able to rebound well. And today, tough rebounding assignment today, and Kelly Olynyk grabbed 7 of them. It was really a group rebounding effort. Jordan Clarkson and Walker Kessler, by the way, tied for the team lead in rebounds. But Lauri Markkanen just always, New Orleans was throwing a slew of different types of defenders at him, and he was scoring in lots of different ways. He had a nice little nifty handoff game with Walker Kessler today. I don't think I've seen that once from Utah yet this year, where Walker Kessler is acting as the handoff man and the re-screener in that action, and you end up having and Lauri Markkanen being the ball handler in that situation. Utah tends to avoid having Lauri Markkanen be the ball handler or the decision maker in these situations. So that's how he sort of ends up with these quiet 31 points, because he's usually the dependent threat, receiving the ball, scoring the final basket, and it looks, and the baskets count more than anybody else, right? Like that still really matters, but it doesn't have the oohs and the ahs of a ball handler type who they have the possession from start to finish. In scoring the basket. So it ends up kind of surprising that you end up with 31 points today. But when he's doing so efficiently, when he's shooting 5-9 from 3, that's going to be quite successful. A big difference in today's game versus the other game on Tuesday against the Pelicans is who is shooting threes for the Pels. So the other night, a lot of talk was about New Orleans Pelicans shooting so poorly from 3, and like I said, it was 2. As I'm looking at the stats here, it was 2 of 21 from 3 in non-garbage time for the Pelicans on Tuesday. But when you look at the guys who were shooting the threes, Herb Jones, Jonas Valanciunas, Zion Williamson, and Larry Nance and Najee Marshall. So all those guys missed all their threes. Right, Trey Murphy went 0-4 from 3 on Tuesday, which is a surprise, right? You'd expect him to make 1, 2, 3, or even all 4 of his threes, and they limited CJ McCollum to only attempting 2 threes. So we talked a lot on Tuesday about, okay, yeah, 3-point shooting is very luck dependent night to night. Over the course of a whole season, and 3-point shooting can really unfairly affect your final defensive rating. But there are still strategies to help you win basketball games from day to day, though. And some teams have complete strategies where it's like, we'll let you shoot a ton of threes, and we're just going to wall off the rim. The Bucks were like this for years, and they've really started to finally implement a system where they're trying to run guys off of the three-point line and challenging Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez to just almost how Utah did with Rudy Gobert and said, like, you know what? Our rim protection is good enough that we don't have to live by this constant barrage of threes. Maybe Grant Williams knocking them off in the playoffs last year had something to do with that. Anyways, teams can generally have strategies, and I think that does matter on a night-to-night basis when it comes to micro strategies. And against the Pelicans, you're saying, yeah, I don't care if Valanciunas shoots 6 threes. I don't care if Zion Williamson shoots threes. He had a wide open 3 today. Zion Williamson had a wide open 3 attempt today, and I love the Yusuf Nurkic defense. Right, when Yusuf Nurkic is guarding a complete, not even remotely threatening 3-point shooter who's standing in the corner, and that guy shoots up a 3, Yusuf Nurkic is already waiting for the rebound, even though it's his man that shot it. Right, and Zion Williamson is a very bad 3-point shooter, but he still takes the occasional 3. He still does it. The only reason I'm mentioning that is because Rudy Gay had his sullen, sorry face with his arms down about 6 feet away from Zion. So he wasn't far away from him. He was just watching him. And as Zion, he doesn't have the fastest release in the world. So as Zion pulls up for 3, Rudy Gay just still keeps his hands down and just stares at him and watches the ball go up. Right? I don't know if a contest would do anything, but come on, man. I just need a little bit more something than just standing there. But Zion makes his 3. But you're okay with that. Herb Jones, 101 from 3 today. That dude can't shoot a basketball. It's fine. And the Pelicans are notable for having Fred Vincent on their staff to teach their guys how to shoot threes. He's probably the best 3-point shooting coach, frankly, in NBA history, depending on what your thoughts are on Chip England, who was with San Antonio for years and years and years and helped turn Kawhi Leonard into a deadly 3-point shooter. But the goal on Tuesday was to force all these non-shooters to shoot. And that was still the case today, but more of the bad shooters were making their shots. So Zion Williamson 1 of 1, Herb Jones 1 of 1, Larry Nance 1 of 2. And those are the only bad shooters that I would see here, because they ended up feeding the ball more into their better shooters. But that's 3 of 4 from their bad shooters, and then their good shooters are actually getting more shots up, right? And they're making more of them. So Dyson Daniels, the rookie, he's really come on as a pretty decent shooter. He went 2 of 4 today. Devontae Graham went 1 of 3 today. He came off the bench because Jose Alvarado was out today, so Devontae Graham got more minutes, and Devontae Graham has always been a pretty solid shooter. He goes 1 of 3. Trey Murphy, instead of going 0 of 4, he's 3 of 7, which was important. And I mentioned CJ McCollum's 3 of 8. So all of a sudden you end up with way more players for the Pelicans who are capable of shooting threes actually getting them up. So they end up 12 of 30 from three-point land today, which New Orleans doesn't shoot very many threes in general, but that only 12 makes is really, really, really low. And if you look at their shooting frequency, they're that would have rated in the 12th percentile for three-point attempts for all games this season. So not very high. It's still not very much, but the right players for New Orleans were shooting them, and they shot a pretty decent percentage, shooting 40% from three today. So that was just an important benefit that New Orleans was able to get today. That made the game just a little bit different. So just finishing up here, talking about some. I should take a couple sips of this excellent beer here. Thank you all for joining today. This has been a lot of fun. This Jazz team continues to impress. We have a lot of fun. I'm still coming down from this this excellent game here today. I'm looking up the Jazz schedule right now to see who they got going on next. I like these little home and homes. I don't know what it is about the schedule, but the schedule has way more home and homes or back-to-back games with the same team. The Spurs played the Timberwolves 3 times in a week or something like that, and it was kind of weird to see them play like a little baseball series. But Utah's playing at Milwaukee on Saturday, and that will obviously be a tough game against probably the league's best defense and the league's best player in Giannis Antetokounmpo. Maybe we'll get Colin Sexton back. He was still out today with a hamstring pull. Simone Fontecchio is still dealing with a knee issue after being the hero the other night against the Warriors. But that Bucks game will be quite a bit of a challenge. So, trying to think about if there's any other broad points to mention today on this game. I didn't really talk much about Kelly Olynyk. I think he provided his usual 35 minutes. I think it was notable that we're getting down the stretch and we're obviously playing Kessler over Vanderbilt, and Rudy Gay's playing more into the fourth quarter than I think anyone really felt comfortable with. And so I thought eventually we're going to have to replace Rudy Gay with somebody, and Will Hardy will never, ever, ever put Jared Vanderbilt on the floor with Walker Kessler. Like, he will never have 2 non-shooters on the floor at all times. He's never going to do that. And I understand the reasoning why, but if you're looking around, you're like, am I really going to replace Jared or Rudy Gay with Malik Beasley, right? Then our rebounding kind of suffers. We only have Markkanen and Kessler out there. And we could really, with a Conley, Clarkson, Beasley backcourt, that is going to really struggle on the rebounding front. He replaced Rudy Gay with Kelly Olynyk, so you end up with that super, super duper size of Markkanen, Olynyk, and Kessler. And I thought that was a great turning point for the defense in the fourth quarter and overtime that got the win there. But he was 3 of 7 from the field, wasn't great. 1 of 4 from 3, had a few bullshit trying to draw foul attempts. He was still able to get 7 free throws out of the whole thing, and he goes 7-7 from the field. had a couple nice rebounds, knows how to just had some good guile today, and he was a +4 today. Walker Kessler, by the way, a team high +12. Fairly balanced plus minus for both teams today. Herb Jones stands out as a +17, while Najee Marshall was a -13. And Herb Jones fouled out with 6 fouls. I think we did a great job holding him to foul trouble in the first half as New Orleans' best defender, and that probably could have swung the game, but all of his fouls were legitimate, I thought, just real two-handsy, swiping at stuff, bumping guys. You just can't do that too much, and so Dyson Daniels was able to get a little bit more run today. Najee Marshall was able to get a little bit more run today, and those guys did not have great plus-minus records, and that was probably part of the reason. Utah did come back with Herb Jones and Zion Williamson on the bench, so that's a big part of it. But Walker Kessler's +12 definitely does tell the story of the game. Like, definitely not maybe the MVP of the game, but definitely the guy who swung the victory for Utah. So I think that'll do it for us on the Salt City Hoops Live postcast and beer. I talked a lot about this wonderful, fun game. Got 2 wins against the Pelicans. We're now 3-0 against the Pelicans on the season. And the Western Conference standing, guys, Utah now sits tied with the Sacramento Kings for 6th in the West, above the play-in. Who would have thought? This has been a lot of fun. Thursday night. Is there any other games going on right now, or are they all finished? Yeah, Phoenix closed out the Clippers. Miami beats Houston by 3. Memphis drops 142 on Milwaukee. They win by 41 points, so Milwaukee might be a little extra motivated against Utah on Saturday to get back on the track at home. It will be their next game as well. They do not play until Saturday as well. So that would be a back-to-back, I suppose. So it'll be a tough one on Saturday. Utah goes on the road. Let me take a look at their overall upcoming longer schedule, just so we know exactly what we got going on here. Schedule and results. Let's see. We got at Milwaukee, at Cleveland, at Detroit. So we have a nice little Midwest run. The Cleveland-Detroit is a Monday, Tuesday back-to-back. Not the worst back-to-back in the world. At Cleveland's tough, but then just taking it's got to be like a 40-minute flight to Cleveland, so they should be fine. And Utah's had way too many of these. They come home for one game. They come home for one game on Thursday against the Wizards, and then they go on another West Coast road trip, Spurs, Warriors, Kings, to close out December. So a little Midwest run coming up, and we'll be here for, I think, all of those. We'll have a lot of fun on Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday for the Salt City Hoops Live postcast. Love being here. Love having a beer with you. We'll catch you next time. Great to be here. Have a good night.